Welcome! We're gonna do a tier list. Haven't done these for a while. This tier list is gonna be best unique units. Now, how do we grade them? It's a bit tricky because some units will have extra strength in early Imperial Age, some will be better in the post-Imperial Age, some will be good in the Castle Age, some are good in just a few numbers, some are good in many numbers, some are good just on water, some are good just against one single unit. So it's a little bit hard to actually nail down what's gonna be the best and what's gonna be the worst, but we're gonna try. I put situational because some units are like, they're very good, but they have very specific situations where they are good. It's not like a universally good unit. And on the other units, I'm just gonna place them according to how I think they are, generally speaking. Also, I'll try to make the videos a little bit quicker. I don't want them to drag on for like 30, 40, 50 minutes, so we'll try to be a little bit quick. We'll go alphabetically. So Arambai will be the first one. I think Arambai have taken a bit of a hit lately. They used to be incredibly good. Once you have them in mass, they're pretty solid at killing units. They don't take buildings as fast anymore, but they are hard to get to with a difficult civ to play, so I'm afraid I'm gonna have to place them in C tier. They're not great anymore. Although, when you get them going, they can be dangerous to fragile units in particular, because they have mobility still, and they can kill units very easily. Ballista Elephant. This unit got a buff not too long ago, when no one in the world asked to buff them. In my opinion, they are S tier. They are a little bit difficult to get to, but once you get 10, 20, 30, 40 of these bad boys, it's almost an impossible armor to stop, and they are absolute S tier in my opinion. Berserks have to go into A tier for me. They are expensive to get rolling. You need a lot of upgrades to actually make them work, like Chieftains for example. Elite Berserk is still quite expensive, but they have a really good counter to cavalry as well. So when you get 40-50 of them combined with Siege Ram for example, you can also run and charge at like anything like hand cannoneers, arbalest, whatever. It's a very good snowball unit because it doesn't really have super clear counters once you get them running. Berserks A tier. I'm not biased just because I'm a Viking, okay? Boyars, oof. I think they are a very good unit, but I'm gonna have to place them B tier simply because they're very, very expensive. First of all, you need a lot of castles to produce them. Secondly, they are extremely expensive on gold. Slavs is also a bit of a difficult civ to play. Again, if you get them up and running in like post-Imperial Age with unlimited gold, I definitely think they could be A tier, but I'm gonna have to place them B tier for now. Also, I'm not really taking 1v1 versus team game into account here. Some units will have more shine in team games versus 1v1 and vice versa. So there is that aspect as well, but this is just my general feeling on units right now. I will also at the end, I'll look over it and see if I feel like anything is misplaced. So these are temporary. They are how I feel right now, but they are temporary. I might adjust them later on. Camel Archer. Absolute S tier in my opinion. Amazing late game unit, amazing mid game unit. They are dangerous from the get-go once you have 3, 4, 5 of them. And they hard counter units like Mangudai, for example. Quite easy to play with Berbers as well. They really fit well into a composition, and they're just utility monsters, honestly. They can play against almost every single composition out there. I have a question in chat asking, don't Camel Archers struggle versus Halb Siege? Yes, they do, but you can still play them against Halb Siege as part of your composition. As for example, you mix in Pikemen or Champion, and then you can have Camel Archers as the unit behind. Camel Scout, which is, I mean, it's a feudal age option. Like the only Gurjara I have access to the Camel Scout in the future feudal age. You can make them in feudal age, so it is unique. I think they're too expensive for a feudal age unit though, so you can't really justify them. I'm gonna place them C tier. Now, obviously they turn into camels upon reaching Castle Age, but still, you don't really want to make them in feudal age because they're just too expensive and they don't really serve much of a purpose there, bar fighting against scouts. Yeah, C tier. Caravels, this is a unit that goes into situational for me. They're amazing at countering, for example, longboats. They're amazing at countering galleons in mass. And they do a good job against land units as well, if you can reach land units. But they are extremely situational, and like you only want to make them in like very, very specific situations. But yeah, they're not a bad unit, so they have to go into situational for me. Cataphracts, S tier in my opinion. If you get them up and running, they are an amazing unit. Infantry, melt like nothing. So I think there is no question in my mind that they have to be S tier. They also trade good against pretty much every other unit in the game. Of course, not against war elephants, for example, but they are an extremely versatile, strong option. And Byzantines, they used to be extremely expensive. You had to get the trample damage upgrade as well, but they lowered the cost of both elite cataphract and the trample damage, so it's easier to get the cataphracts these days. And I think they're absolute S tier. But yeah, it's a bit hard to get to that, especially Byzantines being so versatile. You often lean into other units like Halberdier, Arbalest, Composition, Skirmishers, whatnot. You don't see it too often, but I think it's an absolute S tier unit. Chakram Throwers, honestly, S tier. Do I have to say anything? Most cost-effective post-imperial unit in the game. They just melt anything that moves. Mobile Scorpions with faster fire rate. I can't begin to describe how strong this unit is. Because you also have the discount with the unique tech where they go down in food cost as well. So it's just a crazy good unit and cost effective. I think Gurjara is probably the most cost effective post-imperial civilization in the game. And Chakram Throwers are a big part of that. Chukunu, oof. I think it is a very good unit, but I think I have to place the A tier for now because they are very easily countered at the moment by something like Onagers, for example, because the biggest weakness for Chinese right now is civs that have Siege Onager. They don't really have effective counters to them. But Chugunu, great unit once you get them up and running, but I feel like they are easily countered these days compared to in the past, so A tier for me. Condottiero is the unique unit of the Italians that count the gunpowder. I would probably put them situational. Actually, they're probably not situational. Let's put them B tier. They obviously counter gunpowder units quite well once they get on top of them. They do a lot of extra damage to them, but they're still fairly fragile as an infantry unit, although they are slightly mobile. So they can still be used as a raiding tool, for example, or a meat shield in some cases, but purpose is probably to counter gunpowder, so I'm still going to put them on B tier. Conquistador, almost want to put them situational, because they're not really the best unit in post-Imperial Age, but it's the best unit in the Castle Age, by far, of the unique units, in my opinion. They just pack so much damage, 16 attack they have, they're mobile, they just kill everything. And especially since the recent change where gunpowder bullets go faster, or move faster compared to before, this unit now does even more damage. So, to be fair, there's been a change as well in the recent times where skirmishes now do extra bonus damage against them. So I do think Conquistadors are not as broken as they used to be, but they're still absolute S tier. Fusilier, I mean, you have to go S tier. I mean, this S tier list is getting filled up a lot, which I think is a good thing though, because we like to have good unique units. Fusiliers, splash damage, they have been nerfed as well, but they're still a ridiculously good unit. Did I say splash damage for the Fusilier? I meant charge attack. They have a charge attack. It's like one instant burst and then they have to reload. Cost effective, you can justify engaging into anything as long as you have the splash damage in the right numbers. And it's a fairly cheap unit to make as well, considering you have all the eco upgrades and whatnot with Burgundians backing up the civilization and the unique unit. Flaming Camel, situational. I mean, you only want to use them against mass cavalry or elephants, right? So extremely situational unit. You don't really want to use them against much else, because you need to upgrade the unique tech with Tatars first, which is also quite expensive. And then you have to produce them from castles. It's tricky. I could put this C tier, but I mean, they're still good against elephants, so why not? Flemish Militia, S tier, easy, first in line. Actually, I should not put them S tier, because they're not really S tier. As a unit, I would say they're B tier. They're a decent unit. They're not too expensive. There's almost the same cost as a champion. I would put them in broken because, I mean, you only use them pretty much when you hit the button with Burgundians. As a unit themselves, I guess they're B tier? Maybe C even? They're okay, nothing special. I mean, if you count civilizations and game scenarios, when you hit the button, they're S tier, absolute S tier. But that's only because they come in like package of 180, so it doesn't really count. They're B tier. Gebetto. Oof. I feel like Gebettos have some potential, but I'm gonna put them C tier simply because they feel fragile, they feel awkward to micro. You just feel like whenever any unit gets on top of them, they just disappear. Although they have a lot of damage output, if you compare them to the Chakram Thrower, for example, very similar units, but the Chakram has like guaranteed damage with pass-through damage. While Gebettos are just like you hit or you don't, miss very often as well, and super fragile unit. I think they're just C tier at the moment. Genitors belong to the Berbers. I think this is a unit that is extremely situational, but I still feel like you probably put them C or B tier. They're fairly expensive still for a skirmisher on a horse. Their sole purpose is to counter range units, so they are extremely situational, but yeah, I still think C tier. Genoese crossbowmen, kind of tempting to put them in situational. They counter every cavalry unit out there very convincingly, but they are quite weak in the general sense. If you are facing skirmishers or other range units, they're decent. I'm gonna put them A tier though, because they still pack a punch. Just a bit hard to get to. You need castles, you need economy to back it up. But yeah, once you get them up and running and part of your composition, cavalry units are never a threat anymore. Gulam. This is a unit that was S tier very recently, I would say, but I think we should move them to A tier. The reason they shine a lot, I think, is mostly because of their backing by Hindustani's economy, and Hindustan is being super good in general. But since the recent stat changes, I don't think they're as OP anymore as they used to be. They will counter range units quite nicely, but they die very hard to melee units with high HP and good armor. They also have a little bit of splash or pass-through damage Gulam, so there's danger there potentially for special range units that group up. But yeah, I think they're A tier still. They're fairly cheap. They're kind of like an eagle, just an overall solid unit. It's mostly Hindustani's economy and tech switch that makes them appear OP in certain situations. Wolfnitsa, S tier, no question about it. Absolute best siege unit in the game. Any unit can die to this with the right target fire, and it's just ridiculous once you get it up and running. Huskarls. This is also a unit I kind of want to put in situational, but let's sneak them into... I guess I'll put them A tier. If Goth get up and running and you get Huskarl spam going, it's super hard to deal with, even with civs that have melee units and things like that. But yeah, Huskarls A tier. I think once you get them up and running, economy is like you can raid the economy all over the place. You can obviously fight any range unit in the game, and even like once you get them up and running and can mass produce them with perfusion and whatnot, you can even trade fairly well and overwhelm melee units as well. Obviously they have their weaknesses, but I would say they're an A tier unit. Hussite Wagon, C tier. Every time I make them, I feel like they just don't do anything. The damage is super inconsistent. They are very vulnerable to mangonels. They get converted really easily. They're clumsy to micro. And then people just never use them as like the guarding shield for range units anyway. Like you want to always be mobile with your range units more often than not. So to have this in front of your range units just feels a bit clumsy. I don't know. It's a C tier unit for me. I don't like it at all. It's also fairly expensive. So Imperial Age Camel. Oof. Does it go into S tier or is it A tier? It's obviously a super hard counter. I think it's similar to the Gulam. It's just backed up by such a strong Hindustani's economy to the point where it will appear super broken in some scenarios. But yeah, obviously the intention is to counter cavalry units with the Imperial Camel. It does a decent job trading against range units and whatnot as well. But I think it's an A tier unit. It mostly is backed by the huge Hindustani's economy, which is why it seems so ridiculous sometimes. It's a really good snowball unit as well against, for example, Mangudai, against, for example, Camel Archers, Elephant Archers. Very good unit, Imperial Camels. We also have Imperial Skirms from the Vietnamese. Obviously, with the team bonus, every civ that Vietnamese ever teams with get Imperial Age Skirmishers. Especially when one, they are extremely cost effective, but they're still a skirmisher. So I think they belong in A tier. Jaguar Warriors, also very situational, but kind of C tier. They're just so fragile. Their only purpose in the game is to fight infantry. How often do you see Jaguar Warriors in competitive games? Do I have to say more? They're just too weak, too vulnerable, too unreliable. Janissary, this is also where it's like tempting to play some S tier and A tier. I think we'll go A tier because they have a little bit of a... You don't have as much mobility as Conquistadors, for example, so you're a bit more vulnerable. But the damage output potential is immense. I think you can even justify playing them way more in Imperial Age now than before. They have like also 0 fire delay in Imperial Age, so you can micro them a lot. And yeah, if you have a meat shield in front of them, which Turks tend to have, I think they have massive potential in damage output as well. But usually we see Turks player going for things like Hussar and Cavalry Archers over this just because of mobility. But I think Janissaries are a really good unit still. Kamayuks. It's also a unit that is fairly solid with extra range. I think it might be a B tier. I think they could have potential for A tier as well. With the unique upgrade where they get extra armor. I still feel like they're a bit fragile though, and they still don't always trade as you would like them to. Maybe I feel like they're worse simply because it's Incas, and Incas options are a bit limited. I think Kamyuk are B tier. The extra range makes them fight very good against other melee units as well. Overall, they still feel a bit inconsistent, and yeah, I would say they are quite situational. Karambit Warrior as well. I'm kind of tempted to put them C tier because it just feels so weak, but then again, it's half the population. You can have double the amount of units of them. They're fairly cheap as well, so once you get them in mass, they can be scary, but I don't think they're any more than B tier. They die to everything. It's just that they're cheap and produce fast and cost half the population. Keshik, S tier for me. A cheap unit. They generate gold by fighting, and they have really good stats as well. It's just an amazing unit and part of a great Tatar's composition. I love the unit. If I play Tatar's, I always want to get to Keshik at some point. You can play it as if it's a paladin almost. It's just that good. Kipchak, in my opinion, Kipchak are amazing. I'm going to play some A tier though because they do lack a little bit of oomph in the Castle Age, for example. But once you get the numbers running with Kipchak, their mobility and micro potential is immense. For post-Imperial Age as well, I think they're one of the most cost-effective units in the game. I think people are real sleeping on them as well. I feel like other people might place Kipchak even like B tier, but I think if the argument is up or down, it's more S tier than B tier in my opinion. Super cost-effective, the mobility, micro potential, huge. I love it. Conics. Expensive unit, but A tier. Obviously, once the unit dies, you become a melee unit afterwards, so you have the second life with this unit. It has good stats as well. You can attack 25% faster with the unique upgrade from Bulgarians. It's just a bit hard to get to, even though you can also produce them from the Cray Post. But yeah, A tier for me. If you have the upgrades for infantry as well, the double blow they can deal is very solid. I really like this unit. Although we don't actually see it too often for some reason. Lightis, S tier in my opinion. Ignoring armor is huge. And when you have relics, you can have 21 attack. Maybe, was it 21? Yeah, I think Elite Lightis has 16 plus 5. No, 16 plus 6, 22 attack. Ignoring armor is huge. You just melt any low HP unit and you take really good trades against high HP units. You can even justify fighting counter units because you just kill them, even though you take a lot of damage yourself. So S tier unit in my opinion. Longboat. Now this is a unit where you could argue I should put it situational because of caravels as well. But I feel like longboats have a lot more potential in terms of general use on hybrid maps, whatnot, where you like will always make them if you can, kind of. Because longboats, they're super easy to micro, they're super fast. You just mix them in to help on the shorelines. They're just an awesome unit to play with. It just feels so smooth, which means you can utilize them in many situations, even besides just the pure water maps where they're amazing as well. Yeah, I think they're justified in S tier. Longbowman, A tier for me. Really good unit, especially in closed maps. Generally speaking, they are a good unit anyway. You can use them whenever, but again, a bit slow. Fire rate isn't great. They're vulnerable if any unit gets on top of them due to their low HP. With the meat shield, their damage output is crazy high, and potential to micro them with the 12 range is really good, so I think they're definitely an A tier unit. Not to forget, longbows also look amazing. Magyar Hussar, they don't cost gold, so I feel like they should go A tier, and they have extra bonus damage against siege, so they're a really good unit in general to have a meat shield for, like your Magyar Cav archers, for example. You place them in front of units, you run around, you raid, you snipe siege units. The downside is obviously that you have to have castles to produce them, but I think they're an A tier unit still. They're not that expensive either, especially once you remove the gold cost. They're just a better hussar. Mamelukes. Whew, this unit is spicy right now. I honestly think Mamluks are S tier. They're held back a little bit simply by it's hard to get to them and they're fairly expensive. But the elite upgrade is cheap. You get Zealotry, which adds another, I think it's 20 extra HP to them. And with some meat shield, the damage output from Mamluks is just crazy good. I've started using them a bit more in recent times as well. They also don't take the same bonus damage or same amount of damage as they used to do from skirmishes, for example. So I think the Mamluks now are back to absolute S tier unit, and we're gonna see them way more going forward. Just my feeling though, I could be completely wrong here. Mangudai, do we even have to ask S tier? Maybe the best unique unit in the game. Mobility, damage output. This unit is just unbeatable. Once you have 40-50 of them, they kill everything with some micro in mind. They even do kill siege units fairly quick. It's just such a versatile unit that can deal with anything. Crazy, crazy good. Missionaries, C tier, honestly, they're shit. No, they're decent. I mean, they only have 7 range. So, I mean, the only times you make them is to kind of heal cavalry units or to try and convert other things, but 2 less range when it comes to conversions means that you're just way more vulnerable. And like when you start a conversion, you have to stay, right? You cannot move. If you could micro back and forth, like, and keep the conversion chain going, it would be an incredible unit. But since you're missing that extra 2 range, the time it takes to convert units just makes this unit bad. Even though you can run and maybe escape some enemy units at some times, it's just not a good unit. You always want to make monks instead of it. They can't even pick up relics. Obuk. I like Obuk a lot because they're cheap and they remove armor from opponents. They're a really good unit. However, I think I would not go S tier with them. Wait, are they S tier? Oh, this is a real tricky unit to place actually. They're very cheap to make. They produce fast and they are like a very versatile unit. But some part of me tells me, I mean, they actually have high HP as well for an infantry. So they can even kind of fight against ranged units in the right numbers and like snowball, similar to the Berserk. I would say they are better than Berserks, but are they enough for S tier? I think I'm gonna keep them A tier, but Obuk is a unit that could easily be S tier in my opinion. They're just very versatile, can fight against most things, and yeah, removing armor. Like, I really like Obuk combined with Skirms, because the Obuk removed armor and then the skirms actually do solid damage once the armor is gone. Organ guns, A tier, let's be real. Super scary unit in mass. They're not S tier though, they're a bit clumsy to micro sometimes. They're hard to get to, hard to control, but yeah, the potential with them is massive. They can outrange town centers, meaning you can still do good damage on buildings. You can fight against auto siege units. You can fight any range unit as well in the right numbers. Even melee units you can kind of out micro by constantly moving them back and shooting. But once the melee units do get on top of them and the numbers are not in your favor, your units disappear. It's a super fragile unit with high potential, but also very scary. Plume Dodgers, S tier. They've been nerfed many a times, but Plume Dodgers are just a fantastic unit. Extremely cost effective through all the ages, backed up by a Mayan economy. That is also very strong. The only time you could argue Plume Dodgers fall off a little bit is like post-Imperial Age, especially in team games. And 1-on-1, you might argue that they're better than the Mangudai. They're just an incredible unit, cost effective, cheap. They trade good against archers, they trade good against any unit. Ratha. Ratha is one I'm not sold on yet. I think Ratha have potential, but the main issue we have with Ratha is that even though they can turn into melee mode and range mode, they still get countered by skirms. If you play against Ratha, you just make skirms. Doesn't matter if he has melee mode, you make skirms. Are they C tier or B tier though? I feel like still Ratha could be a really important part of composition for the Bengalis. Like Halberdier, Skirm, Ratha, Elephant Ratha, still super scary composition. But they're so fragile to skirms that I'd rather argue they're more C tier than A tier if they have to go one way. I do think B tier is a fair position for them as of right now. Rattan Archer, A tier in my opinion. Kind of similar to the Plume Dodger, just slightly worse. It has more armor against range units, but they feel a bit more fragile because they have less HP. Damage output somewhat similar as well. It's a very solid unit, but they don't feel as versatile, mobile as Plume Dodger, even though they are still fairly mobile for a ranged walking unit. So A tier. Samurais could easily be situational. C tier is not the right position for Samurai. If anything, is A or B tier. I think in the recent Warlords tournament, we saw a lot of Samurai usage actually. I think they have potential to be, especially when there's like a lot of trash units on the field or infantry or obviously unique units. Samurai are an amazing unit. They also have really good attack speed, so they can take out buildings quite fast too. They're not that expensive either. So with Japanese, Samurai are a really good option, but they're still not comparable to any of the units above them, I would say. Sergeants, I think they go B tier as well. They have really good pierce armor. You can spawn them in mass with the First Crusade, but still they're a little bit clumsy, slow unit. I feel like they're mainly there to be meat shield for range units. Yeah, I feel like B tier is the highest I could give them at the moment. When you see a Sicilian player play, Sergeant is an option, but even then they don't use that very often, and there's a reason for that. Shuttle Warriors, I think also go into B tier. They are a high damage unit, they have potential, but they are super fragile. They produce super fast, they're cheap, but yeah, like I said, they just die really fast, so there's potential to do damage, but too fragile to be trusted. Schrammschreider, S tier. Ridiculous unit. It doesn't only dodge projectiles, it dodges conquistador shots, janissary, hankiness, like gunpowder units. It counters, it dodges bombard cannon shots, it dodges siege onlooter shots, trebuchets. Everything is dodged. It's ridiculous. It's an ultimate counter for, low fire rate range units. It's super mobile, super quick, can be deadly in raids in your economy. If you have 20 of those around in your farming economy, you just want to cry. And yeah, they counter any range unit in the game, pretty much. I hate this unit, which is why it deserves to be S tier. Slingers, I feel like situational is an option for them, but I'm gonna put them C tier. This is an extremely awkward unit to play. They only counter infantry, they're kind of bad against everything else. And they're easily countered by any cavalry, any skirmisher, mangonels, whatnot, you name it. Just a very poor unit. Like other units in C tier, you can still see it get a lot of potential. Like it has a lot of potential to do damage in the right circumstances. So it is arguably situational, but in a general sense, it is a very poor unit. Tarkans, I think we're gonna put them A tier. They have 8 pierce armor, so more pierce armor than a paladin even, meaning they counter range units very, very well. They do a lot of damage to buildings as well, so they're great for raiding, sniping buildings, but they're still don't have the most damage output compared to some of the other units that you would possibly rather make considering cost. Like, do you want to make Tarkans or Paladins? You probably still want to make Paladins unless you're fighting only against range units. You want to make Hussar or Tarkan? Probably Hussar because they're cheaper, you don't spend gold, and they kind of accomplish the same thing. But yeah, Tarkans are a real good unit, especially like if you hit Imperial Age first against a range unit civ and you switch into Tarkans before they get Imperial Age, it could be a game-ending move more often than not. Teutonic Knights, I feel sad putting them in C tier, but I'm gonna have to. They're just slow. They're slow. They can be good, but they're slow. They're not really good. They have great stats, but they're slow. And when you're slow, you're bad. Usually, mobile units have way more potential for damage, and people are very good at microing these days. I would love to see Teutonic Knights higher on the list, but unfortunately, with the way the game is played, Teutonic Knights are not very good. Theresidae, I think it's an A tier unit, maybe even S tier. I think it is the strongest ship in the game right now, but you only get access to it in Imperial Age, and they're very expensive. If you get them up and running, absolutely fantastic unit, but expensive, and obviously only on water maps. But yeah, I think this unit could easily be S tier. It's an amazing ship. We don't see it too often yet still though, so it's hard to place it exactly where it should be at the moment, but I think A tier is a fair assessment. Situational, you'd say? I don't think it's situational because it's a sense where you would always make it on a water map if you can, in my opinion. So I don't think it's too situational. The Caravel is like, even though you're playing a water map, you don't necessarily make it. So I think it's very situational. But Theresidae, longboats, I think you always make them on a water map. Throwing Axemen, B tier for me. They're actually really good in the composition of Halberdier throwing Axemen, for example. I think they're also like, they're fairly cheap on gold. So I think they're actually a really good unit. But they kind of only work in the composition with Halberdiers for the Franks. Paladin throwing Axemen is also amazing, obviously if you can do that, but so gold intensive then. But by itself, it's probably still a B tier unit, although I'd rather move it to A tier than C tier if I had to change. Turtle ships, I think it's C tier. Maybe it's situational. No, I think it's C tier. They're so expensive on gold in particular. Yes, you can 3-shot fire ships, for example. If there's 2 or 3 fire ships, you always die. It's just too expensive for them to actually be contributing much. Although, I would say the one time they are very good is when it's like a super scrappy game and the other guy like only has 1 fire ship or some galleys on the field. The turtle ship would then kind of clean up the whole water by himself. It can be okay, but generally speaking, it's too expensive and inconsistent to rely on. Rumi Swordsman, S tier, easy. Easy. People are still sleeping on this unit, but when you ignore the armor, you do splash damage or charge attack rather. This unit is insane. It's also extremely cost effective, and I think this unit is going to be the sole reason why Dravidians will move up the tier lists going forward. Yeah, I think people still are sleeping on this unit. It's crazy good against any type of composition, ignoring the armor and having charge attack. I tell you, it's a hard unit to deal with. War Elephants get in next to Teutonic Knights for the exact same reason. Actually, maybe War Elephant could be B tier. Nah, they're C tier. Countered by monks. You don't have heresy, so you cannot make them die when they get converted. Super expensive, hard to get to, hard to justify ever making them in 1v1. Although they can be really good in team games. Still, getting converted by... When you have such a powerful unit and it switches sides, that's painful. You don't really want to make this unit. You probably have other options that are better for almost every situation. War Wagons, I think is an A tier for me, maybe even S tier. Actually, I think War Wagons are S tier. Super powerful unit, not that costly. They are kind of easy to play with Koreans as well, because the whole way the Civ plays kind of leans towards getting to War Wagons at some point. You have the armor upgrades for free, and when you have a mass of these units, they just pack a punch, and they are super tanky as well. So I think you can easily argue that they are S tier. Void Raiders, I feel like we have to go B tier here, maybe A tier. I think we have to go B tier here. I think it's a very strong unit, but only in the right circumstances, aka you hit Imperial Age and your opponent is vulnerable to raids, for example. Water Raiders are really good at that, but you don't really use them at any other stage in the game. Sometimes in post-Imperial Age, I guess you can sneak them in, but yeah, they feel not too powerful, although their mobility is great, especially for raiding and early. Like, if you can catch your opponent off guard early Imperial Age with Elite World Raiders, you can snowball a win really easily, but they're still a bit difficult to do. Axolotl Warrior, obviously unique unit to the Mesocivs if you convert a stable and produce it. It's a shit unit though, so get into C tier. But yeah, this is my final list. I did not order them inside their tiers, so you can decide yourself what you view as the absolute best units within each tier as well. But please let me know in the comment section what you guys think, where I went wrong. I definitely know there will be a few controversial choices here, and some units could arguably be up and down from where they currently are. But yeah, this is my current feeling on this day. Tomorrow I might play one of these units and change my mind, but for now, this is the list I will go with. It became a longer video than I anticipated, sorry for that, but you know, Age of Empires has so much depth, so videos become long. Thanks for watching, leave a like if you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. What are Portuguese and Hindu unique buildings? That's not a unit, okay? Get wrecked.